all of the board in attendance, and we can start recording. Okay. Very good. Welcome everyone to tonight's board meeting. If you can, please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thanks, everyone. And I would just like to invite all of us to take a brief moment of silence to recognize those who may be suffering grief and uncertainty during these times of such upheaval. So please join me in a moment of silence. Thank you. All right, we're going to start out today with the elementary update from Mr. Conway.
Okay, so it has been a very long journey, but we have about one more week left of remote learning, June 17th being our last day of instruction. And, you know, I know it's been a challenge for everybody, for our staff, our parents, our students, but I'm really proud of the work that's been done by everybody and proud of how we've made the best of a challenging situation. So, but it is coming to a close, and I guess I sound a little excited with that as I share that, so we can hopefully move forward with things. But last week, our staff returned to the building following safety guidelines and at various times to organize all of the materials that students still had at school. Things like their classwork, art projects, supplies, all of those things that they never really had an opportunity to pick up. So we established 2 days last week. Our parents were able to come in, actually not come in, they went to the exterior doors, wore masks, physically distanced, all of that. They also returned library books, as we're very proud of the fact that we generally have you know, well over 1,000 books out at a time, but we needed to get those back for the summer. So those things were returned, and that went very well. The next step for that pickup is the returning of devices, and that will be next week on Thursday and Friday. Kids will have those devices until the last day of class. But Thursday and Friday, Megan and her team, along with my office staff, have set up a pretty good plan to get everything back, and we'll also hand out our report cards on those dates as well. I did want to mention our moving up ceremony, and along with the 6th grade team, we've really tried to hold out, to wait, to make sure that we were able to do something in person for our students. We all felt that it was wise to do that, and we now are able to do something, and we are excited to have all of our 6th grade kids back on the campus and recognize each and every one of them. The governor approved what he was calling a drive-through event, and all of our students are going to arrive on campus on the 17th with their families and their cars. There'll be a lineup in our parking lot. We'll have music playing, try to create a really festive atmosphere for everyone. Along with Mr. Kukoza, we'll say a few words to the students, and then we will begin a procession where the students will come up to the awning. Our staff will hand them a certificate. They'll stay in their cars again, but they'll proceed through the bubbles. Bubbles are really big for us at LGES at the end of the year. So we've got our bubble machines ready, and the kids are going to follow in their car a path around the school building, around the campus. We have their names on some signs as they travel around, and as they make their way to the front of the building again and exit the campus, they've officially moved up and become 7th graders. So we're really excited about it. We think we put together something that will be different for the kids, memorable to actually be in a car that drives around the campus. I think they think that's pretty cool. And I left off, we are going to sing the alma mater. Mr. Kukoza, you're going to lead us in that with a solo performance first. No, actually, it's something we want to maintain that tradition. You know, in our programs, everybody, the parents and the kids will sing along together. They'll have the lyrics with them. So I wanted to share that. And if you could please reach out to me and just let me know if you're planning on attending. We'll physically distance, but we'll find a spot for you. Our staff's really excited to be there too for our students, our K-6 staff.
What time on the 17th, Jim?
6:30.
6:30.
Start. Folks are going to start lining up at 6:15, but at 6:30 we'll begin with some words over the PA system.
Thank you.
I did want to let folks know that as Mrs. Crossman always does, she is creating an amazing summer reading program for our students. I share this knowing that many of you have participated in our summer reading circles before. So there will be more information coming out soon. I know both libraries in both buildings have got some great plans to make sure our kids are engaged throughout the summer. So more information coming soon on that. And I just wanted to mention again, as Ms. Rutnick has shared before, some of us are serving on this regional return to school committee. And we've been spending a lot of time discussing the steps to get us back to school in September. And then that information comes back to our shared decision-making bodies in the school. We're really at that point where we've talked about some preliminary plans for LGES, but we know that it ultimately depends on what the governor gives us as guidance. So we've had 2 meetings coming up with some ideas, things that we feel will be a part of any plan, the physical distancing in the classroom, making sure that we're looking at our space, our schedules, how we're utilizing staff. And I feel we're in good shape so that when we do get that guidance, which we're all very anxious to get, we will have a good plan in place. And once again, as I've shared many times, the foresight that the school board had over 50 years ago now to build a building in the open classroom model will serve us very well. Once again, we have the space, I think, where we're going to be able to do some things that other districts are going to struggle with because of the way that the building is set up. So I share that with you, and brief report tonight, but are there any questions?
Jim, I'll just say a big thank you for the creative thinking and the problem solving around these ceremonies and the forward thinking with the reopening of school. So thanks for your involvement with that.
Thank you. 6th grade team has done a great job meeting and planning for that event. So proud of what they've done.
Great. Anyone else? All right, we're moving on to Mr. Kokoza with the secondary update.
Hi, good evening, everyone. Welcome to Tuesday, June 9th, the 58th Digital Learning Day, 58th day of digital learning. Next Wednesday, June 17th, we will conclude with our 64th Digital Learning Day. So as of next Wednesday, both K through 6 and 7 through 12 are instructional staff and regular staff and parents and students, along with the administrative staff and everyone else associated with the district, will have supported our students through 64 digital learning days. And when you think about a school calendar of 180 days, 64 is incredible. Couple of topics. I won't be as brief as Jim, so that's why he went quick tonight. I have several topics that I've been asked to speak about and focus on. First, similarly, at the junior senior high school, just like at the elementary school, the cabinet and the shared decision-making body of the elementary school is focused on the re-entry of staff and students in September 2020. Our forum has spent the better part of the past few weeks looking at the re-entry of staff and students for next September. We have looked at several documents, including documents from our own BOCES and the Capital Region BOCES, along with the CDC recommendations and considerations for schools. We really have focused our effort on 5 main topics. And those 5 topics we've broken into subcommittee work, in which in the coming weeks, those subcommittees will be doing some preliminary work around maintaining healthy operations, communication, and various supports for students, preparing stakeholders for our return in September, our building procedures, and any of the instructional logistics that we need to consider in relation to COVID and what the CDC is recommending for schools. All of the work that we're working on is, as Jim stated, subject to change because we are expecting some further guidance during the month of July from the New York State Education Department. So we've kind of focused this month on things that we know and things that we can control, knowing that in the month of July, it may all be thrown out the window and we look at something else. However, these have been very good discussions and worthwhile discussions, and we're utilizing our shared decision-making body and committee structure to support those discussions. And you'll be pleased to know that we are incorporating as much as we can student voice in each of these 5 subcommittees. Next topic is about graduation, end of the year, and all of the events that are associated with closing out the junior senior high school. So we've had a very interesting, I want to say 48 hours since Sunday's announcement by the governor that he is allowing in-person ceremonies. The details around and guidelines around those in-person outdoor ceremonies have yet to be shared. So we're still waiting on those documents and guidance from the governor's office or the health department on what it actually means that we can have an outdoor ceremony with a cap of 150 people. However, we have tentatively set aside Saturday, June 27th as our graduation ceremony. You'll know that that is the original date of our graduation ceremony that's on the calendar. And we've tried our best these past few days especially, but these past few weeks to keep our parents and students aware of our thoughts around graduation. We do have another meeting scheduled on Thursday in which we're going to solidify our plans around graduation. And then our plan is by Monday, June 15th, to share the information with our school community. At this point, the current thinking is that we will have some sort of outdoor ceremony over at the elementary school on the girls' soccer field with the appropriate physical distancing of the stage and our graduates and families and guests and staff and things of that nature. What exactly the ceremony will look like, how many ceremonies we have, the timing of the ceremony and such will really be dependent on that specific guidance when we receive it. The beauty of having an outdoor ceremony is that you are beholden to the weather. So we have set aside the 27th as the actual date of graduation tentatively, with a rain date of Sunday the 28th in the afternoon. If things change, we certainly have the option to do the ceremony later in July, and we're currently collecting some information from the senior class about their availability during the weekend of July 11th and July 12th. So we're hopeful to have that information out to our school and community at the latest on Monday the 15th. Along with graduation, there's a ton of other events that we are planning, including the award ceremonies and a rehearsal, virtual ceremonies, athletic awards, and things of that nature. So I won't belabor this too long. However, very soon we'll be sharing all of those dates so that our school community can set aside specific times for when we honor and close out this school year for our students.
Ms. Koza, could I just interject on behalf of Tricia and myself and the board? Tricia and I really appreciated that you and Ms. Rutnick would include us in the planning meeting that you had on Monday, and that we will be there on Thursday as well. We appreciated being kept in the loop, and you respectfully listened to our thoughts and ideas. I can't compliment you and everyone who took part in that committee. So heartfelt and wanting to do such a great job. So thank you for that.
Thank you, Lynn. One of the events that we do know is the senior parade.
Nice.
Yeah.
I can tell you that the longest seated tenure mayor in United States, and I know New York State history, Bob Blaze, has taken the torch to make sure that the village of Lake George throws the biggest celebration that we can within the guidelines of New York State Health Department. And he has already received approval to close down Canada Street, which is a monumental feat unto itself, for the afternoon of Wednesday, June 24th at 4 o'clock. The parade, led by our volunteer fire department of Lake George, will commence right at 4 o'clock at the high school, and our students will walk down Canada Street, separated in groups of 5 by very large fire trucks and school buses, so that we can appropriately physically distance them. And we're hopeful that the wider school community and parents and staff will show up on Canada Street and line Canada Street as our students walk south towards Beach Road, as we as a community can celebrate our senior. So I believe a flyer has already been shared with parents and students, and I'm sure the board, but please set aside Wednesday the 24th at 4 o'clock. We have set a rain date. I don't really know what that means, but for Thursday the 25th at 4 o'clock. And we are tying some other events prior to that for graduation preparations with just our seniors. So be on the lookout for more information about that in the coming days. Are there any questions about end of the year before I move on to the next topic? Because I know that's been a number one thing that most folks have been talking about these past couple of weeks. Okay, rock solid. So this year during physical attendance, September to early March, our rock solid leadership program took place during extended guide rooms, during a series of extended guide rooms monthly in the mornings. I can tell you that the program was impacted by that. Frequency played a factor, time played a factor, and student buy-in played a factor, along with the impact that it had on the instructional program, with the extended guide room schedule being much more frequent. So in looking at that model and truly wanting to support the Rock Solid program, and this would have been discussed at a curriculum committee meeting, but we because of COVID have not had a curriculum committee meeting.
Really?
The plan is to move Rock Solid back towards the lunch periods where it originally started. That also will help us in the size of our lunch periods, being able to break the student population up into smaller groups, and not have a full lunch period with a large group of students. By utilizing the lunch periods, our staff will be able to reinfuse our focus on the Rock Solid Leadership Program. We will utilize staff's contact periods, a duty period, their 6th period within their day, in lieu of perhaps a study hall or a cafeteria duty like we used to do with the Rock Solid program, and some other in lieu of sectioning to be able to help support this program. We also are considering at this point a hybrid program for Rock Solid in which we will still utilize the 12th grade student leaders, but also support not only our freshmen, but also our 7th graders, because out of some concerns that our 7th graders have not had the traditional transition programs that they would normally by now have had if we were in physical attendance here at the school. So we have some work this summer with the Rock Solid program to transition it in that fashion. It may not start on day one. However, our plan is to move it back towards the lunch periods. In terms of the staff, very similarly to the elementary school, the staff has been in the building for the past few weeks, the 10-month staff along with the 12-month staff. We've had to navigate around the building with the construction project, which has been quite interesting. And I can't thank the staff enough for what they have done in coming in and being safe, being respectful of each other, not coming in as business as usual, however, coming in with a defined purpose and focus and doing their work and then getting out. The secretaries in, I know, both main offices, the elementary school and the high school, along with guidance, CSE, the district secretaries, district office secretaries, our custodial staff, have really done a lot of work these past few weeks in trying to maintain the school and moving forward while supporting our 10-month folks while they've been digitally learning. So I can't thank Lindy and Marianne and Anna and Kristen enough, along with all those other folks who have been coming into the buildings over these past few weeks in supporting our students and our staff. And then finally, attached to, I believe, the board agenda, alongside of the junior senior high school principal report, is a document entitled TOSA. If you could take a look at that document, if you haven't already. These are the updates and changes to the student support service model at the junior senior high school. I will forego reviewing this entire document because folks are fairly intelligent and can see what's written on the document. However, the yellow is where I'll choose to focus. The yellow are the changes and the shifts at the top of the document between the Director of Student Support Services, the Special Ed Coordinator, and the Dean of Students. You will notice that the dean...
I'm sorry to interrupt, but I'm wondering if there's a way to share this on the screen for those who are participating virtually. I'm wondering if Megan is able to put that up there.
So I shared the document with Megan and also Sarah Barton, should that request come through.
I'll share it right now.
Excellent. So I'll just give it a second to
Thank you. Sorry to interrupt.
all right. So we'll spend a little time, well, actually all of the time at the top of the document, the yellow highlights. I do want to emphasize that this is not a comprehensive full list of the job duties and descriptions of these folks. In developing this document, we wanted to highlight the main focuses, the main points. You'll see under the Director of Student Support Services, the additions to that position with support towards truancy matters, working with the dean, working on impact assessment and planning of students who have experienced trauma, and also coordinating with the county on county level resources, along with supporting our teaching assistants and supporting the wellness comprehensive support structure at the high school, not only with the wellness room, the Oasis room, known to folks internally, but also supporting classroom instruction around the wellness support. And the vehicle to do that will be not only with our teachers, but also our teaching assistants. The title grant coordinator has been transferred to Mike Varney. In terms of the special ed coordinator, case management will be assigned to the special ed teachers starting in September. This was a model that the junior senior high school used to utilize. We moved away from it because of some numbers and the sheer amount of case management. That number is much more manageable at this point. So the thinking is that moving it back towards the special ed providers will form a more cohesive delivery of services. In terms of the dean, the significant shift and change you'll see is that it is a 0.8 position with focuses not only on discipline, but supporting students with truancy, probation, and other case management relating to 504, and generally supporting the student support structure and all that it entails, with coordination with the Director of Student Support Services.
So Fran, I just have a quick question for the for Chris's position, the 0.8 and the 0.2. How does that look on a typical day? Like what hour wise, what will he be breaking it up and how will that work? Or is that not determined yet?
Excellent question. So the way it works, it would be one class a day, which equates to 40 minutes. Chris, the dean, will be teaching a world history class for some of our special ed students. So that's one period, the timing of which is sometime in the morning, not first thing in the morning. It's either second or third period or somewhere thereabouts. But one period for 40 minutes in the morning, the rest of the day would be devoted to these other topics.
Thank you.
So what did that look like previously?
The opposite, more or less. It was 0.4 dean, 0.6 teacher.
So where did those other items in yellow, where did those come from? I mean, I see things going to other places. Where were those items?
Some of those were under the Director of Student Support Services. Some of those were the 504 was under the Director of Student Support Services. The anti-bullying is a co-facilitator, and that was shared by actually several people. Teaching assistant meetings is not necessarily a change, it's just incorporating it as part of the scope of Chris's work. I believe I covered everything.
Yeah.
And it's more of a collaborative model in working with the Director of Student Support Services, that bottom bullet. So I believe that those are the changes of this in progress document that we're sure to tweak along the way. But it definitely addresses some of the concerns throughout this year of the ability of the Dean of Students to time on task address student matters as they arise.
Fran, can I clarify something about 504?
Yes.
Okay, so 504 case management, 7 through 12 will be assigned to grade level special ed teachers. K through 6, Katie Price is going to be the 504 case manager. We're going to continue with that model. So I just wanted to clarify that for the way it's written on here. Okay.
I apologize for that.
That's fine.
That wasn't delineated in that fashion.
And so why would the ninth grade, it says perhaps ninth grade, why would that be pulled and a little bit different than the others?
Can I answer that one, Fran?
Yes, please.
So what we're looking at, we haven't really sat down to really, I think what it looks like is that, the case management, there's only maybe 2 additional 504 students that are going to be added to the caseloads of special ed teachers. But when we look at ninth grade, it was 5 additional students, which would bring the caseload up to 12 or 13 students for the ninth grade special ed teacher. And we talked, but we have not decided yet whether we're going to, that would be the biggest caseload at the junior, senior high school. If we'll go with that with the special ed teacher at that grade level, or if maybe Chris could pick those 5 students up.
Thank you.
So any other questions in relation to that? Megan, I believe you can stop presenting. So that was the work of several meetings and back and forths. I appreciate Lynn affording us the opportunity to have those discussions and put forth this document and work towards you folks. And your questions are always welcome. So if there's anything further on this document that you later look at and don't understand or have further questions about, please, I'm sure Lynn would appreciate those questions.
Is there, Fran, is there a regular kind of plan for evaluation of a sort along the way to see if it's providing what you have expected and the changes that you've made?
So just like this school year, we engaged in conversations along the way and knew fairly early on that we're going to need to make some changes to the model. I anticipate with Lynn's support that we would do that similar type of pulse check on the model. If you recall back, I believe it was January or thereabouts, Mr. Mondella and I presented to the board in regards to a mid-year kind of assessment of how things were going with the dean. And we would welcome that along the way as kind of like that's our midpoint. We could work towards that and assess it throughout with Jamie and Kim and Chris. Yeah. And that's why we really emphasize the top of the document, draft, proposed, work in progress.
I appreciate the time and the effort put in just for our students. It's wonderful. Thank you.
And I believe that that's everything that I had, unless I'll ask Lynn if I missed anything in that discussion on that proposal or that document.
No, I just wanted to thank Fran, Jamie, Chris, and Kim for engaging in that discussion. It was planned for a couple months ago. So we finally, after quite a few meetings, and I know, Fran, you led those meetings to begin, and then they fed the information back to me. I don't know why I have an echo. I did not know, I know that there's been a lot of conversation around student support, and I also want to make sure that if it hasn't already been discussed at shared decision making, that people get a chance to look at that before we call it final. So That would just be a request. I'm surprised no one has any more questions. I know when we started this, you had asked, and I told my team, there might be some questions about data, how we're going from up from a 0.4 to a 0.8, and I know that they've been looking at those trends. And I really appreciated the conversation, especially the mid-year check-in, taking some things off Kim's plate, really aligning it better with, balancing the team. I appreciate everybody's support. I know Mike is excited to take on the Title IX grant, but he's going to need some support in that because that's a big lift. So, I'm surprised there's no more questions.
Well, just to address that, we talked about data, Lynn, and one of the issues that we put forth was the fact that we've been out of school for 58 days now, so it'd be really hard to assess with student data in regards to the effectiveness of the model. The second thing is if the desire of the Board of Ed is to run this through the shared decision-making body of the Lake George Junior Senior High School, we certainly can. I don't know how I would reconvene that committee in the waning days of the school year. And I certainly would have done that at the beginning of this discussion. So I would need clear direction on if that is the request, then I'm going to need a little time to convene the group that I just actually had on Monday talking about reentry items.
Well, I can say that, I appreciated the presentation in January and the collaborative work that has gone into this current proposal. It's certainly something I'm going to take a deeper look at and see if I have any other questions to go. I'm pleased to see the increase in the dean ratio there. I think that was something that came about in the presentation this year, and I think the greatest thing is the collaboration, that folks are meeting, more than once to look at these things and balance them and see it as a work in progress, is ongoing.
Yeah, and I don't think there's many questions because a lot of it actually makes sense. I'm glad that, Chris is having more time devoted to the highlight items. So I think it's a good plan to put forward, and of course they'll be reevaluated. So good job, guys.
If I can jump in and just say, I do really appreciate the collaboration that took place coming up with this document. And just to note, a lot of the collaborative pieces that are reflected in this document were already happening. And this document really just clarifies some of those roles a little bit more, which is great. And I feel that the changes in the Director of Student Support Services are really going to allow a more student-centered approach as the school year approaches for this next school year, working a lot more with students and with parents on all of those student support issues. So I really appreciate this. I'm looking forward to seeing how this plays out, and I see it as being very successful. And I'm looking forward to working, closely with Chris and looking at reevaluating as regularly as the year goes on. So thank you all.
If I may, in the chaotic times of COVID, how have student support services been going? I haven't learned anything.
I don't know what you said, Tom.
So the question was, in terms of COVID, how has the student support services model fared? More or less, Tom, is that accurate?
Yes, you're not having daily contact with your kids. How's that all?
So if I could answer that, I think what it's done is it's emphasized that the internal communication between the student support team, which includes the counselors and the folks present tonight, along with myself, and the teaching staff, the internal communications are so vital because we have struggled in some areas with students engaging and communicating. and the fact of having everyone on the same page really has emphasized the need for a model in which we know who's doing what, who's focused on what, and who's the lead or the case manager or the person delivering the support, whether it be an in-person support, a visit to a home, whether it be utilizing outside services through the county and beyond, whether it be utilizing a digital platform to do a counseling session with a student or a parent, or most importantly, communicating back to the teaching staff of that specific student who's struggling what actually is occurring in that home and what is being done behind the scenes. So some of it we've invented, Tom, along the way. Some of it has relied on tried and true practices of just loving kids and being there for them. And some of it has really emphasized really the need for knowing what the county has been offering and affording our parents and students those resources as well.
Thank you. So it sounds like even though it's been a struggle, it's been a good learning experience.
Yes.
I think we've talked about this a few times with different positions and with other things. I think there is value in collecting the data around these issues and these roles to gauge, I think Lynn asked, how are we going to gauge the effectiveness and, where we're committing our resources. And I think, collecting that data on an ongoing basis to help inform decisions, I think is a really important thing for this type of decision, but also for, other decisions within the district.
And I think we also must recognize that student support services, it's a fluid thing. I mean, our students' needs are increasing in some areas, like we're seeing more anxiety, we're seeing more A, B, and C, and I think those support services needs to be like altered depending on what we're seeing at that time. So it's going to be a fluid progression, I think, as we move forward.
Yes, and Mrs. Steele, if I can just piggyback on that, one of the reasons why the anti-bullying committee was shifted to Chris is because we've seen a need and a desire from the students themselves to participate and have someone help them facilitate some awareness raising of mental health concerns in the school. And so the goal here, and I've talked to Fran about this as well, is to create a student mental health task force. So we really have our finger on the pulse of what the students' needs are too, in terms of all of the student support pieces there, including mental health.
Thank you.
Nice job, everybody.
Yeah, Fran, do you have any more topics to present?
No, that's everything. I asked Lynn if I missed anything in the presentation, so.
Okay, very good. Well, thank you, Fran, very much. And shout out, Fran, Jim, and your entire team. I just want to let you all know that with the flexible thinking, the creative problem solving that's going on with both of you and your teams and everyone involved in the school district, that you need to know that you're using your brain elastically, and that's going to help you in older age with all of your, staving off any, confusion or, those things that come along with age. So you're keeping young. All right, Lynn is up with the superintendent's report.
Okay. Like Jim and Fran, I want to thank everyone in the school district and the community for their support. While things have appeared to have slowed down as far as the news and the videos and the updates, I can assure you between the ballots and the delay in counting, as well as we got an executive order to say that we are able to move forward with some in-person extended school year for special education, and some property tax news that we are still getting news every day from our governor. So we thank him for communicating this on June 9th. So things are still moving, but we are slowly but surely getting to the end of the school year. I also want to point out, it appears that hairdressers and barbers are opening up, because I see everyone, especially the males, are looking very good for the end of the year ceremony. And I hope for the females we get there as well. Yeah, a lot of things happening. I wanted to also just thank Fran and Jim for their flexibility with graduation. As I believe, Fran, I think you said, and you can help me out here, I think it was time and patience have been our friend. We've waited and waited and waited and waited and waited, and we're a lot of school districts that I meet with daily, the superintendents have put out plans, been beaten up, rolled back plans, and now they're finally at a place where they can really plan, because we know what it's going to look like on the 26th and 27th. I'm excited to attend both in the graduation and the moving up. And for those of you who don't know, I had surgery scheduled because I thought these things were going to be more drive-by or virtual, and I have postponed it until August once again, because I want to make sure that I am present for these. This is going to be a really memorable end of the year. Also, I would like to give an update. There's been a lot of questions since our last meeting talking about the proposals for a director of innovation and instructional technology, as well as moving the school business official to a school business administrator. And so if Megan, you could put up some of my talking points, I just wanted to review those and then allow for an open discussion before we move forward with the agenda item. So, and I appreciate that the last couple of years, the board has really been focusing on our policies and our procedures. And so something that, as you know, we have been updating over the years as things have shifted to better align with the needs in our strategic plan, as well as our resources. So this was a proposal for the structure that I would like to recommend tonight and have more discussion about. Really, the change is moving the school business official to a school business administrator, K-12, and the director of innovation and instructional technology to a K-12 line, not a building line, where in the other structure, they were both on the building line. Folks have, I think I might have tweaked the student support service director, because I think in the past it said 504. So this is just if we move forward, this is what that would look like. And it's really one line has shifted. And the school business official would be the school business administrator like in the past. Does anyone have any questions or comments before I move into the talking points? If we were to move forward with the recommendations tonight or in the future, I would just ask that Marianne would work with Marianne and Sarah to take out the old organizational map and replace it, because there's an attachment so that you can reach the addendum. Okay, Megan, can you go to the talking points? Thank you. So after receiving some feedback and some questions, what I tried to do is just really take the two positions and categorize them into the themes of some of the questions that I've answered. I did put together, I believe it was an 8-page Q&A and I appreciate folks giving me questions. Questions came from the board, the shared decision-making body, LGEA, and some other folks. So I said, let me just go over some of the items that in my opinion were repeats. So as far as the need, K-12 responsibilities have evolved, and I have been talking about this throughout this year. Before COVID-19 hit, Megan and I started to talk about her position back in the fall. As you know, the board went to, I think we had full board participation at the NISBA conference, in which we learned more about the new data privacy mandates, otherwise known as Ed2D law. As you also know, for folks who've been on the board for a while and who are participating in our Spark committee, we have this goal, wonderful goal 3, around innovation and engagement and learning environments. And that has been a real focus for the last 3 years. It is also not looking like it is going to come off of our goals in the future. And so the IT support as well, with the director, she's been working very closely K-12 with the 2 TOSAs. And as you know, Bonnie Hart came on full time. That's been a wonderful shift as well. And that continuous improvement cycle, looking at that position, it's going well. And I know that the director of innovation instructional technology has worked really closely around how to support the efforts in the area of curriculum. We did shift to an APPR focus, that this person has picked up some more of our APPRs, and really the understanding around that is not only is it a heavy lift for both the principals and I, but it really, my intent was to have the director of instructional technology and innovation just be working closer, hands-on in the classroom. So if you go in and observe, you can follow back up with, hey, I really loved how you did this. I would love to come on in and see if I can support some of your efforts in the area of innovation or instructional technology. And then as far as K-12 decision-making, that's already happening. This person is definitely involved she's involved in our principal meetings. As of really this year and last year, we've made sure that this individual has been in to see the bigger picture K-12. As far as regulatory data, this person oversees the registrar's office, and also she's making sure that the SMART bond grants and other district-wide financial responsibilities are in check. That's a very big responsibility. And so we've been talking through those items, but really what has moved this recommendation forward at this point is COVID-19. The challenges that came forth to our district really highlighted and confirmed for me, the district superintendent, the need moving forward. The intense amount of work with the teachers for professional development, with our leadership team, our principals, and our TOSAs to create our virtual and remote learning plan, both now and how it's going to look in the future. Professional development needs would continue and will be, I think, more important than ever, knowing or not knowing where we're going to go in the future. And also, we and Lake George pride ourselves on not only bringing in, but retaining highly qualified individuals to help navigate everything that we do here. Teachers, custodians, bus drivers, we want to make sure that we have the best and we put our resources into that person. And we have done so with the director of instructional technology and innovation. And as you move into the future, and no one knows what it's going to look like, but I can say one thing for sure, I think it's going to look different. And I think that this position, moving from a 10-month position into a 12-month position, will be crucial when we start looking at our imaging and reimagining our school district and how it's going to work. If we have to go down with the population of students, if we have to go off the grid again, as far as making sure that we have another remote learning plan, that person would be instrumental in supporting our students, our faculty and staff, and the structure of how that will get done next year if we do go into another shutdown. The past practice like this, I did hear a little, oh my gosh, what if we go out to the voters and they didn't know about this position? And I want everyone to be assured this position has been here well before I was here, and I think we're around 10 years that this position has been here. So this position will be budgeted for. It has been budgeted in the past. It was in the budget this year, and it would be continued if as a superintendent, I would absolutely support this position being continued in the future. So there will be no budget implications moving forward. The past IT directors also have been civil service. And from what I understand, and the direction I got from Megan on this was that a lot of folks came forward to say that when you are a civil service employee, there is not as much commitment. It is something that will go, it'll be kind of the first thing to go is civil service positions. And so that commitment to our school district and the person that we put resources in and is part of our LG community, that moving into a 10-year administrative track would be my recommendation. As far as negotiations and the legal aspect of this, some questions came up. We are currently in negotiations with these two individuals, and we don't openly talk about those negotiations. So there are things I can say and things I cannot say. However, this is the time, there's been some, I would say discontentment, like why now? And what would think that this would be a good idea? And I have to tell you, in the middle of COVID-19 and a shutdown, I can't of a better time to be talking about the director of innovation and instructional technology and the need for that and how this has magnified this need. Also, during contract negotiations, we're talking about salary, we're talking about and retitling if it's civil service or administrative. And I know you've heard this from me, if it walks like a duck and it quacks like a duck, it's a duck. I believe that this person in this position is already doing a lot of administrative duties right now as a K-12 administrator. This person has the certification and has really invested in herself as the district leader. It's also my job when people would like to investigate and look at leadership roles, and whether it's a TOSA position or whether it's other positions, that we try and support that. I believe in that. That's part of our mission and being lifelong leaders and learners. And as I said, this position would, at no increase to the district, move from a 10-month position to a 12-month position. And I can see the heavy lift in front of us as far as our reentry plan for the summer it's going to be enormous. As far as legally, some of the questions that came up is it fair to not post this position, to not interview other people? Great questions. We did reach out to our law firm at Gervin and Filazzo, and first and foremost, when you do reclassify a position and over 50% or more of that position is similar, the person in the current position has a right to that position. That's the first thing you need to know. Posting is a contractual bargaining unit concept, and it's never required by law, but it is done so because the contracts require it. So you want to always make sure that you're abiding by the contract. And since neither of these members are in bargaining units, they are a solo contract, there is no posting requirement. So in summary, and I believe I said this in the last, is this good for our district? Does this support our mission, vision, values, and where we're going? Absolutely, and especially at such a unique time that we're facing right now. I believe it absolutely aligns our resources and what we're trying to do to support our mission, vision, values, and really where we're going to try to go next year, which we don't know right now, but I can tell you it will look differently. So those are my talking points from what I took away from my 9-page Q&A. I am very open to questions at this time, or would you like me to move into the director of, or the school business official / administrator position?
I think let's take a few comments or questions from board members on this particular position.
Sure.
So I would make a comment and just say that I've really always thought of this position as an administrative position. When you look at the organizational chart, this position supporting both of the buildings, it wouldn't make any sense. It doesn't make sense to me to have it report into one building. So, I mean, from that aspect, this makes sense to me. In addition to employee retention, I think I agree with the point about the need for the heightened need for this position. I mean, we've always, I think, in the time that I've been on the board, with the rollout of one-to-one learning, one-to-one computing, it's the need has been there. I think, the remote learning, digital learning has just heightened that need. I think it's an excellent point.
I agree with Tim and what he said, basically, and having this employee for a 12-month position, it just makes sense. The needs are increasing. When we went to the last board conference, it was a lot on technology and a lot on growing student services, technology, and moving forward in that regards. And then, of course, with COVID-19, as Lynn said, it just became so evident that this is something we really need to focus on, and it's a position that really has a broad need to acknowledge that.
And I just want to make a comment too. I agree with the comments that have been made so far, and it does for all the information that has come past us on this, and I've thought a lot about it. It really does seem to make sense from my perspective that this position coalesce and kind of solidify into something that is, not a 10-month position. It is something that is like institutionalized in our structure. And I mean, again, the pandemic responsibilities, the EdLaw 2D responsibilities, the district-wide responsibilities, it all makes perfect sense to me. One concern that I do have is that there have been suggestion that requests for further dialogue on this topic, and out of respect for the individual in this position and everybody else, internal stakeholders, external stakeholders, I would want everybody to be starting off on the right foot should a shift like this occur. And so I just want to make that comment. I think that if more dialogue is necessary for people to feel positive about any future shift and recommendation, that we invite that dialogue and provide that time.
And I will say, at every step of the way, when I have received that feedback, I have looped back around with the individual in this position, and that the person is absolutely open, has a completely open mindset around, if that's really a concern, I really wish that I could talk about it so that, that I could reassure folks, and also say, this person all of a sudden is not going to change the way that she does business, but the position itself is a need, and I think that's really important, that if this person were to go someplace else, would we be needing this position? And I can tell you emphatically, yes. This is an area where right now I would be very concerned, and I'm not saying that we wouldn't be as far along, or we're doing a great job collectively, collaboratively, but I will say the systems and structures and how this job has evolved, even in the 3 years that I have been here, that this position is really going to be needed in every school district, to be quite honest. So if it's about the individual, I think, I'd like to parking lot that and say, to me right now, it is about the need for the position, and the great need to, did we do this well? Absolutely. Some people excelled at this. Could we do better? Absolutely. I mean, we were thrust upon virtual learning, remote learning very quickly. And if we ever have to get in this position again, which is likely, we want to make sure that we're not just doing it okay, that we're doing it really well, that there's rigor and relevance, and that, where we go in the future with this, this position is going to have to help us with and help support.
I agree with what you're saying. If we're in a, an unfortunate situation like we are currently, but also just looking after the presentation in January to the curriculum committee on the EdLaw 2D information, I mean, we got an hour's worth of, a compacted version of all of the mandates that are coming forward. And to add that responsibility, I think it justifies totally having this be a 12-month position instead of a 10-month. So just those mandates alone are going to need attention.
Well, I also think it's worth noting to say as these things have come about, so more PD needs, more support for teachers, staff, students, and then Ed Law 2D. We keep adding these stipends on, so it's like the job starts here, and then we keep adding a stipend and adding a stipend, and now it's like, wait a minute, let's just look at this position and say what's working, what's not, what has to come off this person's plate to make sure that the focus, is really where we want to go with our strategic intent, really. And then all of that would come into a salary, a 12-month salary, and a tenure track administrator. I mean, it's really, there's a couple stipends that used to go along with this. And I mean, it's getting a little silly, like this job is evolving so much. We just keep adding stipends where I don't believe that's the right way to systematically approach this position.
This will add a great deal of consistency, I believe.
Yeah, and on an individual basis, we're lucky that it's Megan. She does a great job. So we're all fans of Megan.
No, it's been very important to me, and I think our board has done well, especially in this situation, making data-informed decisions. And when I approached this one, I thought, okay, what is the data in front of me, not just the narrative around this? And I found those in two very specific places. And one was at the law workshop at the NISBA conference. And that was, that was in the late fall, early winter, and they were talking about Ed Law 2D and the needs around a position like this, and very much emphasized the administrative piece of it. And I remember thinking to myself, oh, isn't that great? I feel like George is ahead of the curve. We have somebody who fits this description within our district working hard already. And then that was reinforced to me during the curriculum presentation that we had, that revisited some of these points and made them more specific to what Lake George has. The feedback I've received has a lot to do with folks' notion of what an administrator is, what an administrator does, concern about a top-heavy organization, concerned about resources moving away from students. And I don't think that that is the case in this situation. I think that these are resources that are absolutely directed to student needs and to faculty needs to meet the student needs. And I see a direct correlation and benefit there. That's already been proven and, is like we're saying, is an increased need. So in terms of data points, I feel very confident in terms of helping people through the change process of understanding that this is a title change and
not a new position.
Yeah, and I do understand the echoes of changing administrative roles in the past and how we can hesitate and think about that. And in this situation, it is very different than what has happened in the past. But I think in terms of time and understanding, I know some questions that were posed were just answered like a day and a half ago, giving a little bit of time for folks to digest and accept. I think that's going to be very important going forward with a change, even in title, to have folks digest and understand and accept and help that position be as successful as it can be.
So after the May 19th board meeting, I circled back and reviewed the list of questions and concerns surrounding the two administrative positions, because the list of questions was for both of them. And they were compiled by the superintendent and they came from the LGEA, cabinet forum, and building leadership. And I felt that some of the questions were still unanswered. So I reached out to the superintendent with these questions, and the answers were shared with the board and the whole board. And yesterday, these questions and answers were shared out with to the LGA, the principals, to share with the shared decision-making bodies. And Lynn has addressed the questions and answers that were within this document. And at at last month's meeting and from the recent questions and answers, I've seen that shifting these current positions from civil service to administration seems to give the district a great value with flexibility, efficiency, continuity. And as a district, we want reliable, consistent, streamlined systems. And when structures are disjointed and pieced together, it can lead to greater expense and significant communication breakdowns, which is not ideal. An ideal model for delivering the best education for our students. And it is my understanding that with this shift in positions, we would not be spending new money. We'd be moving the money from a different place in the different section in the budget. And it appears we get more for our money. So much of what I have heard makes a lot of sense to me. But what gives me pause is some gaps in the process of the decision making behind the recommendation. There were many folks who were surprised to see the positions on the agenda for this meeting since the first public discussion was 3 weeks ago. LGEA, and Forum were asked for input the day before that May 19th meeting, and they had many questions that still weren't answered on Friday when the agenda was posted. And based on the feedback that the board has gotten, the internal stakeholders were consulted, but were not part of the collaborative process for assessing the needs in these areas and part of the idea generating and creative problem solving for meeting these needs. So that's a concern that I have that gives me pause in moving forward before these opportunities have been given.
And I can speak to that. You know, I gave some folks, some human resource directors a call just to kind of run by some questions that I had, you know, and I think it's going to be really exciting next year to dive into, you know, the purpose of shared decision making and how it relates to personnel. I think it's going to be really exciting to partner with the board, with some folks who've really done this work with HR to say, you know, I'm not so sure that everybody understands, you know, from their lens, what a school business administrator does or what a director of innovation, engagement, and technology does. That's, you know, so consultation and collaboration and answering questions, you know, I'm doing the best I can when they came my way. But I also think I do take those, and I did go back to the drawing board with both the individuals because I was making sure to feed those out and understand the questions myself that were coming my way. And every time I did, I felt, you know, really sure in this recommendation, and then would share that out to the board. So, you know, it's a little sticky when you're asking shared decision-making bodies to be making personnel decisions. So that's my feeling. And I also think it can really impact the culture and the climate in a very negative way if those individuals are people in our organization. And I was very relieved to hear that from folks who have done human resource and shared decision-making work in other surrounding districts. So I am excited about that conversation and really clarifying that role because it can get a little hard to do, especially in a small school district, to have shared decision-making bodies making decisions about personnel. They are advisory in nature. They are not decision-making bodies when it comes to personnel. And I will say that as a district superintendent, you know, one of my bullets is to make sure that I am giving these recommendations, especially the reason why it's moving forth at this meeting is simply because we have a board who knows these positions and knows these individuals. And I don't believe it would be in the best interest of the district to put any new individual in a position to be making those decisions. And right now, time is of the essence. We have a plan to move forward. We could quite possibly be in a fiscal crisis in less than 10 days in our district. So I want to make sure that we could do this in a time where the dial and the tone had kind of toned down a little bit to a 100 miles an hour. So was it perfect? No. Am I perfect? No. And is any process going to be perfect? Probably not, but we're doing the best we can with that.
And I just want to give a shout out that the information that you have provided to the board and the questions that you have answered has been, very comprehensive and very transparent. The feedback that you have given us from other stakeholders has been super helpful. And also a shout out to community members who have reached out with their thoughts, their questions, and opinions. Helps us have a big picture view and look at these things from all angles. And I know we've done that very particularly in this case because we're careful with the administrative structure means a lot, and understanding the roles and responsibilities of our district is important to all of us. So thank you.
And Katie, I completely hear what you're saying. If we had more time right now to do it, I would love more time, but unfortunately we are in such a unique position, and these two positions, in my opinion, are invaluable moving forward this summer. So I appreciate the feedback that you provided.
And outside the shared decision-making teams, some of the feedback we heard from was from the LGEA in terms of the leadership team is filled with professionals that could have offered creative alternatives based on needs assessment and institutional knowledge. Instead, stakeholders were allowed to ask questions only after the plan had been devised and presented for approval. So beyond the shared decision-making team, it was referring, some of the feedback we've gotten was referring to the professionals within the district.
And I hope, because one of the items that came up was why couldn't this position be a TOSA? And I hope I've answered that, because I think that was some of the creative problem solving was, could we make this position a TOSA? That was something that directly came from my LGEA discussion, and I appreciated that virtual meeting and those questions that came through at that meeting that I know I shared with you.
Thank you. Board members, do we have any other questions or comments about the innovation position? All right. So Lynn, you can, I think, go on to the school business administrator.
Thank you. So similar to the Director of Innovation and Instructional Technology, I took those talking points and those themes, and as I have stated, we are quite frankly, New York State and possibly Lake George it could be heading towards some big problems with our fiscal outlook, knowing that the governor's making a lot of changes to how our aids, our foundation aid and our state aid will look. And right now we were hoping to have a little bit more of an indication of how the budget vote was going to go, but that could be a very different discussion, and I hope not. Again, that need to retain we pride ourselves on retaining highly qualified individuals. In this situation, with our current school business official, we are very fortunate that we have a teacher, a certified teacher, who was also a coach, who spent many years as a CPA. And I believe, looking at the vision and our mission and our values, that it could only support the bigger picture of having this individual be retained at Lake George to help us in the area of teacher evaluations, and also just really getting to know and being more than the numbers guy, but being part of our culture and climate. And we haven't had that in the last couple of years, as far as, someone who really understands what the inner workings of being in the classroom and coaching, and then that outside view around being a CPA. So I think it adds huge value to our students and our faculty and staff. That K-12 decision-making, as you know, we have moved through a capital project this year. The individual in this position brought with him a great deal of knowledge and from his outside and past experience about how to really balance the needs of what's going on for teachers, administrators, and the folks in the district with making sure that we're adhering to deadlines, because money is and funding is attached to those deadlines. Again, I believe that this position aligns with our strategic plan and having our resources aligned with what we're trying to get done here. If we don't have or cannot retain a longstanding, knowledgeable school business administrator, it's going to be really hard to move through and effectively get through our audits, our spending, and our annual budget process. And if we can't do that effectively, we really aren't going to be able to move forward with the good programs and the tradition of excellence that we have been able to fund. We are very fortunate to fund. As far as past practice, this is again not a new position. This is not something that the taxpayers could say, I didn't know about this position. It's been in the budget. It's in the past, it's currently in the budget, and it will remain in the budget. As a matter of fact, I realized that the past 3 out of 4 school business administrators or officials have been administrative. Kate Dubois was not certified, so they moved into a SBO versus a school business administrator position because she was not interested in moving and doing that type of educational program in her career. She had what it needed to get to have a school business official. And right now, as far as negotiations, at time of hire, which we don't talk about negotiations, but please know that the second round of the hiring team, which was the vice president of the board, the head of the audit and finance committee, and myself, that we talked in great detail about the fact that the individual applying for the position and who was our final candidate was getting his school business administrative certificate, was underway with his internship, and the expectation was absolutely that we would be moving to a school business, back into a school business administrative model. And that is one of the reasons why the individual chose to take the position. We also are doing negotiations right now because annually, these are annual contracts, and we talk about salary and civil service versus administrative. As the board knows, we did go out and ask the districts in our CASDA review what were the range of salaries and what were competitive salaries from an SBO versus a school business administrator. And I also shared the 2019 school business administrator survey, which talked about competitive salaries to be able to retain our school business officials and administrators. Same with the other position legally. This job does not need to be posted. The person in the position currently, if reclassified and retitled, does have an obligation. We have an obligation to give that person the position. And because they're not in a contract area that bound by a contract or a bargaining unit, the position would not be, Meg, I think that's you. The position does not need to be posted. So again, these conversations were shared with the board back in, I believe, July or August, just saying that the school business administrator was going for that degree. And we've been talking about that more in recent months. So is it good for the district? Does it align with our strategic plan? Absolutely.
And I can tell you from just my own past experience being on this board previously, and also having now spent 18 years on the BOCES board. The BOCES also just went through a search for a certified business official, and that's a huge job as well. And the candidates, the pool is pretty thin out there right now for qualified people. And your business office is the heart of your district. Everything stems from there. And to have someone with the qualifications that Mr. Varney brings to this position, I consider Lake George to be really fortunate to have found a candidate that wants to be in Lake George, likes the district, likes what we do with students, how we really focus on student needs and student successes, and having a stable, consistent business official running all of those important financial things is so important. And especially all of the other stuff that Mr. Varney brings to that position, especially his years in the classroom. So a true understanding of educational process and students.
Do we have any more board comments or questions regarding the school business administrator position?
Yes, just wanted to say, you know, to be fiscally responsible and to look at the bigger picture, we can't, making him an administrator, I think, is the right choice, because when we look for the long term, what he's going to bring and what he's going to do for our school district, having that consistent person there with the skills that he has is the fiscally responsible choice to make, because his position matters so much in the years that are to come and the difficulties that are to come in dealing with that. And I strongly support Mike in that administrative position.
And I just also want to say, Lynn, thank you for all of the information that you have provided. It has been really useful to be able to dwell on all of this information and recognize all of the strong rationale for doing everything that we can to create stability in this position, the other position as well, as we move through, you know, uncertain times. It all adds up and makes good sense to me. I do have the same concern in this situation as the other. I want for best outcome. I'm always concerned that stakeholders have time to digest the information as well, and to complete dialogue. But in my own mind, all that you say makes perfect sense, and feel good about that. Thank you.
Thank you.
I would echo what Lynn and Melissa and Marianne have said in terms of what makes sense for both of these positions. I appreciate the detail. I've asked a lot of questions. The previous meeting and in between the meetings, and those answers were, like I said before, were shared to the board and were shared out yesterday and have been discussed this evening. And so much of what I'm hearing makes sense, and we are extremely fortunate for the folks that we have currently in these positions. They are stellar at their work. The one piece, again, that gives me pause, I just feel like as board members, before we move forward with these recommendations, we need to make sure that the gaps in the process are addressed so that we're sure we're voting on a recommendation that comes from a truly collaborative process that will best serve our district. And I believe we need to table this vote so that the rest of the collaborative ideas can be woven into the decision-making process for finalizing a recommendation.
And can I ask, what would that look like? Can you go to the next slide, Megan? You know, so again, discussions have been happening around Mike, the director of instructional technology, as well as the school business official, for quite some time. And again, just from the feedback I've received from the board, to make sure that I'm having first those discussions with the building principals, which we started back in January. And, you know, I did right here just what those, you know, how those discussions had happened. So I guess maybe, you know, in hindsight, should I have asked the building principals to share that out back when we started having discussions and things were kind of more taking shape back in January? I'm just not sure what else other than another like staff workshop would look like, because that would be that could definitely happen. I just think that, especially when this was one of the items that was discussed at the time of hire, that would seem a little, might give the wrong message to one of the individuals.
So regarding both of the positions, the feedback that the board had gotten from the LGEA is that there was the opportunity to offer creative alternatives based on a needs assessment and using their institutional knowledge, that was not afforded, and that they were allowed to ask questions after the plan was devised and presented to them. So that's where my confusion is.
So, I mean, if you can point me to, in the past history where these needs assessments have taken place, I would love to see them, and maybe we can incorporate those into hiring practices, because I know that I'm going to be focusing on solidifying and really codifying what hiring practices, where the need would come from, because usually those needs come from the principals, but it sounds like you'd rather have them come right from the shared decision-making bodies to the principals, and then from the shared decision-making bodies, the principals to me. And that's fine. But I just need to see what an example of that looks like. I've not experienced that here at Lake George or in other places that I've worked. So.
What I'm referring to is actually the internal professionals, the feedback we got from there. I mean, the shared decision-making bodies didn't have a lot of time, but I think they understand that they have a portion of the role within the district for decisions. But the specific piece I'm referring to was the reach out from the LGEA in terms of the professionals feeling that not being part of the identifying the needs and having the opportunity to offer alternatives or creative ideas and work together to see what else it might have looked like. What you've presented may be the ideal thing, but I don't know that, because I've gotten feedback that there wasn't that opportunity afforded to work together to have some potential creative alternatives.
Lynn, I want to say that, this timeline really demonstrates the hard work that you've put in to lay groundwork and to have collaborative efforts going forward over the long term, and transparency and, organizational thinking. So I thank you for that and putting it out here. I think for me, just the only two pieces that were in terms of timeliness is just that the answers that came to LGEA just a day ago, and that just yesterday we received the contract. So in terms of the negotiations, and that's something that we can talk about a little bit more when it comes down to the vote. But those would just be the pieces that I would point out would be, in terms of the timeline, short notice for the board meeting today. And once again, going forward, I think echoing what Mary Ann's sentiment was, recognizing the importance of stakeholders being able to reflect and absorb any changes that we're putting forward, so that we have buy-in to any change process. And I feel very confident with these positions, a little bit less confident with our fiscal position, not knowing whether the budget has been passed. And so those are a couple things that we're weighing right now. Yeah. Any other questions or comments from board members?
And I just want to clarify that nothing different in the contracts is, I know we had reviewed that in our executive session, and so I appreciated that conversation. That was reflected in the contracts. Our legal firm was asked right after that meeting to move on that. However, they apologized because they have been very busy with all that's going on with the elections.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So. Thank you, Lynn.
Yes, thank you for the conversation and the feedback.
Absolutely. All right. Lynn, do you have anything else in your report to add?
I do not.
You know what? I have one question that came up, and if you don't know this, because I didn't say anything ahead of time, but in this it says that they're not part of a bargaining unit. And is that something that can change in the future? Can there be an administrative bargaining unit that comes in and has more influence behind negotiations in the future? Or is that an established thing at higher? Or is that something that we don't know just yet?
I don't know the answer. I'm sure. I mean, there's a union and association for almost everything and anyone. So if that's what we'd want, we would just have to negotiate that.
Right. Okay, great. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. And moving on to Mary Ann McKenzie with the Policy Committee report.
Okay, so tonight we have got 4 policies up for second read, inclusive of immunizations of students, student records, access and challenge, probation and tenure, and school safety plans. We did not have any new policy updates come under our review this month. There is one policy that I do want to make mention of. It is policy 6122, which is complaints and grievances by employees. It was discovered that this policy had been updated last June 2019, but that update had not migrated to the policy manual and board docs. And once that was discovered, it was corrected at the end of last week, I think on Friday, June 5th. So just to make people aware. I did have a phone conversation the Friday after our last board meeting with the Erie One BOCES policy representative on May 15th to receive her guidance on best practices for keeping a well-kept policy manual, basically. She her overall thought was that, given that we receive quarterly update services, that's probably the element that goes furthest in keeping us in good shape. Beyond that, and beyond that, getting policy committee eyes on any given committee after 3 years seemed to be a good cycle for taking a look at policies, though that experience may not yield, any significant issues or things that we might want to change, because most of the policies really revolve around laws and mandates. But that if we, have the time and wherewithal, looking at policies on a 3-year cycle, it would be considered good form. But we'll be discussing that and, settling on our next moves as a committee at our next meeting in July. And that's it. Any questions?
Very good. Thank you, Mary Ann. Moving on to the school business consent agenda.
Okay, as recommended by the superintendent, be it resolved that the Board of Education of the Lake George Central School District hereby approves the school business consent agenda, items A.
Move approval.
A second? Was that Mary Ann?
I'll second it.
Oh.
I'm sorry, it was Tim seconded it? Okay, I didn't hear that. All right, very
See
good.
what happens when you cut your hair off?
Very good. Any, so we have
Discussion.
any discussion, folks, on this? No, very good. All in favor? Aye. Signal with your hand. Any opposed? Motion carried. Excellent. All right, moving on to the faculty staff recognitions. We have faculty staff tenure recommendations.
As recommended by the superintendent, be it resolved that the Board of Education of the Lake George Central School District hereby grants tenure to the following wonderful, outstanding employees: William Brown, science teacher at the junior senior high school; Lindsay Whiting, teacher assistant at LGES; Faith Helms, nurse, LGES; and Jessica Cross at LGES. She's a speech and language pathologist.
Move approval.
Second.
Any
So moved.
Okay, we got our second. All right, very good. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carried. A big congratulations to William, Lindsay, Jessica, and Faith. Yay. Yay. All right, next up on our list is the business official appointment.
As recommended by the superintendent, be it resolved that the Board of Education of the Lake George Central School District hereby creates the position of School Business Administrator effective July 1, 2020. This position replaces the previously recognized Business Manager position.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion, we have a second, and a discussion.
I'd like to make a motion to table this vote until we close the gap on the.
Motion on the table. Katie, we have to finish the discussion first.
Okay, so Katie, you'd like to talk about the.
Talking about tabling this particular vote until we close the gap on the process.
I have to say that I think that we've done remarkably well with the process piece. I think there's always room for improvement. My concern going forward with this position has more to do with the fact that we don't know what our budget is yet. We're in the midst of negotiations, and if we go forward right now, we don't have any leeway with negotiations going forward. We're locked in. And if we go to a contingency budget, my concern is that we're going to have to make some very, very difficult cuts in other areas. And I'd rather have a balanced opportunity rather than locking in right now. And so that's something that I'm thinking about. Any other comments?
I would just counter that a little bit, just I guess play devil's advocate to that opinion, just to say, if God forbid that the budget is defeated and we go to a contingency budget, I think the value of that position actually increases.
I think the value of this position is undeniable. I think that in any kind of situation that we have an incredible professional who has,
Actually, I have to.
administrative.
So yeah, I hear what you're saying. I guess what I'm trying to illustrate is that, regardless of the budget vote, I think we all feel that we need to have a high quality school business official, and the ability. So I don't want to talk too much about the position, I guess, about the person, but I think that in the attracting and retaining a person in that position, I think is valuable whether the budget passes or not. Maybe even more valuable if the budget does not pass.
With all the information that we have before us, I just have to agree with Tim on this one. If we wait, Mike's position is so important if we go into contingency and moving forward. So because of that uncertainty, I think that's the value of that position, and us taking action is so needed right now. And we're always open to discussion with community members and other stakeholders. We're here to listen, but also know that we've done our due diligence as a board. We've asked a lot of questions. We made sure that we had every possible way of understanding this. And I feel confident as a board member that we have done our due diligence, and that to act in the best interest of the school district, we should move forward at this time.
I concur with Tim and Melissa. This is a crucial position, and we're fortunate enough to have attracted such a quality candidate. And I don't want to even think about if we weren't able to keep him here. I think that what Melissa and Tim have said is accurate, and I think that we should move forward with this to keep the consistency that has already been brought to the position, to move forward with strength and knowing what a quality person we have in that place.
And I just want to throw in, I mean, I agree with all that is being said. The individual and this, I mean, the view of this person is, as Tricia said, undeniable. And, you know, I have nothing but respect for the person in this role. And for that reason, including that reason, I want, you know, people to I want people to feel franchised in this process. I want everybody to be able to start off with the best foot forward, feeling that as best as we can. And if a bit of added time is afforded in that situation and can be helpful to that end, then I would support that.
Tom, do you have any thoughts on the matter?
Well, the importance and possibilities of the position are always going to increase. So we have a quality candidate. I think we need to move forward. As a matter of fact, I will vote on
I'm not sure.
We can't hear you, Tom.
I don't know why you're coming out a little warped.
Or muffly.
Turn up my volume. Is that better?
That's
A little
much
bit,
better.
yes.
Yep.
Okay, I had to turn up my volume more. I was just saying the importance and the value of this position is only going to increase. We have a great candidate.
Do both you and Tim have your audio on?
Oh, Tim, can you mute?
Go ahead, Tom.
I was just saying, I'll say it again.
Better.
No, the importance and the value of this position is only going to increase.
That's right.
I think we can move forward with this. And as a matter of fact, we have a vote on the table right now. It's a motion right now.
Right.
So I think we need to move forward.
We have a motion, we have a second, and then we had another motion that was put onto the table to delay the vote. Do we have a second to delay?
You can't have two motions on the table at one time. You have to complete the action that is on the table currently.
Okay. So we've had our discussion and we'll move forward to the vote.
I don't really understand how that would work, because if somebody's making a motion to table, then that means there's a pause on the recommendation, to vote on the recommendation.
Well, no, I think I agree with Lynn. We have a seconded motion. We need to either goes up or down.
Well, so should I have before a motion was made for a vote, should I have made the motion to table?
I believe so. I'm not an expert on Robert rules, but I believe so. Yeah.
Katie, that's what you should have done.
Okay, so we're going to go ahead and complete this motion. For those in favor of the appointment of the school business administrator, say aye.
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 And those who are opposed, say nay. Wait, did we get a count on the ayes? We had Tim.
Mary Ann and Melissa are not coming up. Their video is off, so I couldn't hear them, and I can't.
It was a yes for Melissa.
Oh my gosh.
Your vote? Okay, so we have Melissa as an aye, have Lynn, we have Tim, and I believe we have Tom. Is that correct?
I don't have you.
You don't have me, that's correct.
Okay.
Yeah, okay. And those opposed at this time? You have Trisha, you have Katie.
And
Marianne on video.
Are we getting her vote?
oh, I'm sorry.
I can't see her.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Marianne, are you an aye or a nay?
A nay.
Okay. All right. And so I believe that motion is carried at a 4-3 vote. Next item. All right, sorry, moving on to the Director of Innovation and Instructional Technology appointment.
As recommended by the superintendent, be it resolved that the Board of Education of the Lake George Central School District hereby creates the position of Director of Innovation and Instructional Technology effective July 1, 2020. The position replaces the previously recognized Director of Educational Technology position.
So moved.
I make a motion to table this vote.
There's already a motion on the table.
Okay, well, I asked previously how to go about it, and so as soon as she was done speaking, I made the motion to table it.
Okay, you can go forward with that motion. We haven't gotten a second for this one. We'll go ahead and attend to that. So, so we have a motion to table the vote for the Director of Innovation and Instructional Technology. Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, Marianne seconds, and can we have discussion, please?
I guess what I would have to say is of the two positions, especially this position it's the same salary, 12 months out of the year. This is less, I guess, of an issue than the previous one. So I'm wondering why we would table it at this time.
My reason, I talked before after Lynn's presentations, which were very thorough, made a lot of sense. We have incredible professionals for both of the positions that are being talked about tonight. It's just closing the gap on that collaborative process and giving more time for that is the reason I had made the motion to table it.
I have to agree with Melissa that moving forward, especially that we're in the middle of a COVID experience and there's so much uncertainty moving forward, and the value of this position is already evidenced. And I think as Melissa said, that there's no financial change to this. So to me, this is crucial again, and I see no need to postpone a vote for further information. We've gotten a ton of information from the very beginning. This wasn't decided just yesterday. We've been talking about this for a while. Yeah. So I don't see any need to postpone it any farther.
And would the decision be different if we postpone it? And I feel strongly that the answer is no. So for us to do our due diligence and act as a board, I think we should be moving forward at this time.
And once again, I think that this position importance is only going to improve. I mean, it's only going to be important. It's only going to be more valuable as you go into the future. And done correctly, I have no reason to think it wouldn't be. It can help us reduce costs. It's just going to be more and more important with technology, more and more of an issue in education.
I have less concerns with this position in terms of the budget, simply because it's budget neutral in terms of its salary level. And I understand that that is the, any step increases are in line with what they would be, whether with other teachers, administrators, that is adopted as a norm right now. There's nothing outside of what would be the norm otherwise. So I think that that's for me in this particular situation, the budget piece and not knowing if it's passed yet has a little less impact.
And again, this is Mary Ann speaking. I agree with everything that everyone is saying. I just come at it from a different angle. I think that added time could set these individuals up for greater success, and that's where I'm coming from.
And I think there's something to be said for that with the change process, not to rush something out, and give folks an opportunity to absorb and think. And I think with that piece of it is a good reason to pause. So I can
One more thing.
Both ways. Yep.
One more thing to add to that. I think the success of these individuals are what they bring to the table, not of what others think of their position or of them. And I just wanted to say that.
Agreed.
So we have a motion, right?
Yep, we have a motion to table, and now we have a second. So we had our discussion. Does anybody else have anything they want to add to this? Okay, all in favor to table this this particular vote?
Aye.
Aye.
Mary Ann and Katie, and all those opposed tabling it at this time?
Opposed.
Opposed.
I'm opposed. And did we hear
Tim?
from Tim?
Oh, yeah, so I'm opposed, yes.
Okay,
Did we get Tom?
Yes.
Tom, I
Okay,
heard
sorry,
Tom.
Tom.
Yep.
There's
Sarah,
my,
did you get-
there it
Did
is.
you get everybody, Sarah?
Yes, there was only 2 no's, Katie and Mary Ann.
Very good. So, this motion is not carried, and we go to the motion to approve the Director of Innovation and Instructional Technology appointment.
And there's already a motion on the table.
Yeah, so we need a second.
Second.
10
you.
seconds. And any discussion, further discussion about this position? Okay, all those in favor of approving the Director of Innovation and Instruction, say aye.
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 And those opposed, nays?
Nay.
Mary Ann?
Katie,
and
yeah.
Kate. Okay,
And only because I feel like there needs to be a pause, not because it has nothing, absolutely nothing to do with the person.
that's okay.
You don't
Thank
have
you.
to qualify your
Thank
vote.
you,
That's the
Kate.
same enough.
Yes. Okay, very good. I thank you, everybody. That motion was carried. And Sarah, did you get all of the ayes and nays?
Yes.
Excellent. Okay, moving on to amending the 2020-2021 coaches list.
As recommended by the superintendent, be it resolved that the Board of Education of the Lake George Central School District hereby approves the amended 2020-2021 coaches list and salaries associated with those positions and the 2021 volunteer coaches list. So moved.
Second.
Second, any discussion?
I have a question. So what happens if we don't have a sports season in the fall? What happens with the coaches?
That's a good question, Tom. I have shared the letter that I will be sending to the coaches, extracurricular and club advisors this week to say that we are going to be approving $250 out of everyone's stipend that has been approved to just get the setup and the contact with their students ready to go should we come back, hopefully, in full force over the summer or in the fall. But that until they hear from me, that we will not be paying stipends or coaches pay until they hear from me, because I have to make sure the season is going. So everyone who is approved, we congratulate them. We are committed to them. And we will be paying a $250 prorated out of their coach's stipend or their club stipend, but that we will not be moving forward with any other pay until we find out what we're going to be doing in the fall.
Thank you.
Thank you. That makes sense.
Thank you.
Any other questions, comments about coaches list? All right, all in favor? Aye.
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 Any opposed? Nays? No? All right, motion carried. Moving on to the superintendent contract addendum.
Motion, be it resolved that the Board of Education hereby approves the addendum to the Superintendent Lynn Rutnick's contract dated June 9th, 2020, which authorizes the board president to execute said addendum and authorizes payment thereunder.
Move approval. We get a second?
Second.
Okay, from Mary Ann, and any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? All right, motion carried.
Is the addendum a public, oh yeah, it's on there. It's as an attachment. I got it.
That was a question. I think that it wasn't out there at first, but it is now, so that the public can read that.
Right.
So we are at the section of Board of Education comments and discussion, and I just wanted to make just a quick little comment. I read the NYSBA On Board newsletter recently, their newspaper, and then I also attended a Discovery Education webinar, both focusing on equity in education. And right now we have quite a bit going on in society, and I just wanted to point out our collective civic responsibility in talking about societal inequities and our own self-reflection for awareness and critical thinking with all of the social unrest that's going on. And I invite community members, board members, anyone to have dialogue and conversation around these items that are out there, and think about what are things that we can do as board members, as educational leaders to advance that conversation and really work at dismantling oppressive systems that may exist, and looking at our policy language. These are all topics that came up. So if you haven't looked at your On Board, you can take a look at that and read about that, and please do engage me in conversation. I look forward to having more dialogue about those topics.
Thank you. That's a good comment.
And it is, this is the last board meeting of the year, at least formal one. We don't know if there's anything.
Katie's not here, never mind. I was going to say we should have everybody come in here.
Oh, we could do.
Yeah, except Katie's not here.
That's right. Oh, that's right. Okay, so we're just going to do this virtually. We were thinking we would all be in the same room. We're not all in the same room. And so this is our last board meeting of the year. And I can tell you that we just want a few recognitions. We're going to start with Lynn and Sarah. Lynn and Sarah, we value working with you very much. The hard work that you have put into this district in such an unprecedented time, the extra work that has gone into play leading this district. And we want, as a board, want to show our appreciation to you. And Lynn King is going to demonstrate. We have planters, beautiful planters, to show our appreciation to Sarah and to Lynn. And let's go ahead and have a round of applause, and we will deliver these in person to you.
And our arm wrestle, which one we like.
That's right. That's right.
They're identical. They're identical.
The other recognition that we have this evening is that Tim Collins, who has been a board member, a board president, he's served 2 terms. Is that correct?
Yep, 6
to
years.
6 years on the board, and he has faced challenges for certain. He has faced triumphs, and I just want to give a shout out because board service is stepping up, taking responsibility for two things that people cherish more than anything: their children and their tax dollars. And those things are near and dear to people's hearts. And because of that, you know, there's a lot of emotion, there's a lot of care. And Tim, I want to thank you for putting yourself out there. I want to thank you for serving and being willing to be there for the Lake George community. So we have a gift certificate for you, one of your community favorite places, the Sans Souci. And we look forward to celebrating with you at the end of this meeting. So let's give a round of applause for Tim's service. Yes. Yep, we will. Okay, we'll keep those folks on.
Thank you, everyone, so much. Sorry, I was having a technical issue, but thank you so much.
Did you hear?
As some of you know, it was a very difficult decision for me to decide not to run for the school board again this year. I've got, you know, definitely some things in my life that I want to tackle. So I'm looking forward to that and have started on some of those things already. But I wish you all the best of luck moving forward, and I'll be here to support you.
We're
Thank
keeping
you.
an eye on you, definitely.
We're counting on that for sure. Very good. All right. Any other comments board members have during this board member comment time?
I just wanted to say as a superintendent that Tim has been a guiding force with our strategic plan. He has been an ongoing light and questioner, and we talked about that. He likes to ask a lot of questions, open-ended questions. And when I first met Tim, we talked about always defining what integrity meant to us and to carry it around with us when you get in tough times, because you need to be true to yourself and your values and always make student-centered decisions. And I want to thank him on behalf of the entire faculty, staff, and community, and especially myself, for bringing me to this great district. Although people think and used to laugh that I was a transplant, I've been here my whole life. And you've just been a really student-centered guidepost for us. And I hope you don't go far, but I will hope you enjoy your Tuesday nights.
Thank you.
He'll be at the board meetings. What are you talking about?
Giving us grief.
That's right. That's right. Well, I hope so. I hope so, Tim, that you will continue to collaborate with us and be present in
Go that
realm.
easy.
Yes.
No.
All right. So next up, we have public comments, and folks are invited to send their comments through to boe@lkgeorge.org. And as of right now, I don't see any comments in my inbox. How about you, Sarah?
I do not.
Okay.
These things used.
But as always, if you are attending, please do reach out to your board to express yourself. We're here for you, and we look forward to more dialogue. And I think that's it. So we have a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Can we get a second? Tim seconds. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion carried. Board members, let's meet out in the hallway. We just have a little after
Tell Katie where we're
meeting.
going.
And Katie, she knows.
Oh, she
Yeah,
knows. Okay.
Yeah, so we're heading
Don't
out.
leave Katie out.
Yes. Very good. All right. Thanks, everybody. A great 2019-2020 school year.
Yay.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
Good.
Well, that was very good.